How's it going, folks? Stu here. Listen, September and October, pretty whammy months. If you were the sort of person to describe months as whammy. If you've been a subscriber to the channel for a while now, you would have probably thought, hey, where the bloody hell was your September Letterboxd roundup, you know, those monthly roundups you do? The answer is, it didn't happen because October, festival month, beginning of October specifically, London Film Festival, very, very busy time. So I just didn't have time to do a roundup of the previous month. But here we are, it's November finally. Firstly, what on God's green earth is going on with the fact that it's nearly Christmas 2023? What? But the point being, it's November. So what better time to look back on the previous 2 months in a big festival edition last month on Letterboxd? Poop. Just felt like I wanted a reason to have to make future me edit the word poop on screen. Enjoy that one. So, as is always the case with these roundups of films I've been watching, grab yourself a beverage because you don't want to be watching something like this without a drink in hand. This is a coffee from this morning. It's barely full and it's cold, so that's sad. Don't be like me, get yourself a new coffee and or water, and let us jump straight into everything I've been watching in September and October. Oh, very quickly though, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you've done that, and if you've liked this video at any point so far, give it a like. Hey, why not? It's fun. Shall we look at September? I haven't got it up. Shall we look at September? Here it is. A small month compared to the absolute gargantuan beast that you're about to see in October. But it's quite nice, you know, a little palate cleanser, I suppose, before the main course, as it were. What did we watch in September? We started things off on the 2nd with Afire. Afire? Afire. Afire. This is a new Christian Petzold film, German filmmaker who did previous films like Transit. He just did Undine. This one's sort of like a dark, comedic summer film about a writer going to get away to try and write his novel, okay? There's your premise. As a huge fan of summer hangout films where characters just chill in remote summer spots, loved seeing Petzold's weaving of that vibe with his usual darker touch. Yeah, ultimately, really, really big fan of this one. I did want to love it a bit more, and I found this with pretty much most of the Christian Petzold films I've watched. The ending never quite satisfies me in a way that I would like to have seen it satisfy me given the rest of the film. I will say it does leave a lot to think on when you leave the film, and I like films like that, so it's kind of like a positive and a negative in many ways of his films for me. But there's a lot to love in this one. As I said, not least just the summer hangout vibes. It's not entirely just a film devoted to summer hangouts. There's a lot more going on, but it does owe a lot to those kind of more chilled out European summer vibe films, which I'm always a big fan of. Just made me wish I was watching it in summer, to be honest. Not with the fire part though. I could do without that. Although, and how's this for a relevant joke? We may all end up in fire sooner than we think. The climate's trash. 4 stars for Afire. Still don't know if I'm saying it right. On the 5th of September, I rewatched Past Lives, which is a film that came out and was just delightful. It is a story of 2 Korean childhood sweethearts meeting again later on in life in New York, and we watch what happens when they meet up again later in life in New York. I never did a full review for this one on the channel, but I have spoken about it on the previous last month on Letterboxd. This was a rewatch, and if you remember correctly, I really loved this film. I think it's really great, but it wasn't like an incredible wowing experience for me on first watch. There are a few things that I wanted to see would get ironed out on rewatch, and annoyingly, those things are still there on second watch. There are a few missteps in here for me that occasionally take me out of the broadly lovely and tender tone that song creates so wonderfully elsewhere. Absolute banger final act. Yeah, none of my issues are in the end of this film. I think it ends amazingly. But yeah, there are just a few moments littered here and there that do feel like they're a little bit more, well, as I said on my previous thoughts on the previous last month on Letterboxd, there are moments that feel a little too easy and a little too obvious for the film that it's in, the film that broadly isn't a, easy hand-holding watch. Does still make me cry. Past Lives, 4 stars. Good stuff, man, good stuff. Then on the 5th, same day, that's a rarity, I think. It must have been a weekend. The mundanity of these videos, man. I watched Days of Heaven, a Terrence Malick film from the 70s. I didn't review it, so we'll just add one now. Yum, yum, look goody. Obviously, a very good-looking film. It's a Terrence Malick film, but it's always great watching directors that, like, first earlier works, right? There's not a huge amount of new stuff to add here that hasn't already been said about Days of Heaven, but apparently it was a difficult shoot because they made sure they were shooting at golden hour for all these shots, so they would shoot in very small moments each day when the light was looking right. It pays off. It definitely is a good looking film lighting-wise. Very nice. 4 stars for Days of Heaven. More like Days of 4 Stars. And then we watched on the 10th, 5-day gap. I'm very good at doing that, sorry. We watched Huesera, The Bone Woman, which is a Mexican horror film basically about a woman's sort of first time mother, but she's having a kid, right? And then a demon has got other things to say about that. That's all you got to know about this one going into it. A lot of great ideas that work a bit better on paper than in execution, and some serious horror overacting does get in the way a lot of the time. There's some really amazing body horror stuff in there that's really cool when that happens, and I liked all of that stuff, but I do think that a lot of the scares in there are sort of let down by just not quite landing it as well as it needs to pull it off. I know it's a low budget film, but sometimes the look gets in the way of just how sinister it can be. But broadly, it does create a good atmosphere, even though I think a lot of the performances are cranked the fuck up. 3 stars for Huesera, The Bone Woman. More like the 3-star woman. Shouldn't have said it. Then we had a week-long gap. Don't know what I was doing, but it was apparently not watching films until the 18th of September when I watched Rotting in the Sun, which is a film that kind of came out of nowhere for me. But as soon as I heard about it, I immediately knew that this was something I got to check out. It would probably be my vibe. It is a dark comedy directed by Sebastian Silva, in which he plays himself as he meets an influencer played by Jordan Firstman, who's playing himself as well. And then it just becomes this, I don't really want to say too much because the beauty of this thing was just how wild it was in its kind of unpredictability and not knowing where it's going to go. Relentlessly paced, funny as fuck, but also evolving so interestingly from scene to scene. At first I wasn't sure if it was going to be as effective as I wanted it to be. Like it kind of teeters interestingly and intentionally on being obnoxious, you know, it's dealing with the world of influencers, but actually works really, really well for the film and allows it to do some more interesting and batshit stuff. One of the more memorable films of the year for me. I would have loved to have seen it in cinema, but it was just streaming on MUBI, which is another plug. You can get 30 days free on MUBI if you do want to check it out, down in the description below, so go to that link. You know, you could go have a little click on that. 4 stars for Rotting in the Sun. Then on the 21st, I had my first watch of London Film Festival. The festival hadn't started yet, but they do like pre-festival screenings. So that one was The Lost Boys, which I actually never gave a full rating and just said embargoed with a lot of O's there because I was embargoed at the time, but now I'm not, so I can change that. 3.5 stars. That's what it's getting. It kind of is quite cliche on one hand, but on the other hand is charming and well performed and well executed enough to be a good time. So I think it just sort of lands in a good time. Not the strongest of the year, but a good enough French romantic drama. I've done a full review for it on the channel, so this is the part where I start saying, look, you can go and watch these reviews. There's going to be a lot more of that through the rest of this video. Then on the 24th, I watched The Assistant, which is a first-time watch. I was very late to this one. It's a Kitty Green film. I'd heard a lot of people say that this was very good, and I never got round to it, but I decided I'd watch it because I was going to watch Kitty Green's next film, her newest film, her sophomore feature, at the festival the day after. So I thought, hey, let's get this done. Let's get this finally watched. And I was really, really quite impressed by this. Amazing building of a claustrophobic, toxic environment around a central character. Amazing what it chooses not to let us in on and what it knows we'll pick up on. 4 stars for The Assistant. But yeah, as I just said seconds ago, I then watched the day after that Kitty Green's second film, her newest film, The Royal Hotel, which has finally come out in UK cinemas, I believe. So if you've had a chance to check it out now, go over to the video and let me know what you thought about it. We can always have a fun little chat there. Knows how to create a tense as shit atmosphere, but this one was surprisingly a little more playful than her debut until it isn't. That claustrophobia is still present. I don't think it's quite as effective a film overall, but Julia Garner smashes it again. And obviously, I love Jessica Henwick and everything she does, and she's great here. I still love her. 3.5 stars for The Royal Hotel. And yeah, with that, we are pretty much just into London Film Festival territory here. But buckle in, lots of films. And you'll see as I try and remember specifics about the 32 films I watched over the next week and a bit. 27th, towards the end of September, I caught Hitman, another pre-festival screening. Again, full review on the channel, links down there for that. Linklater really said, hey, what if we found the most chemistry ever? Good grief, the chemistry in this film between the two leads is truly insane and absolutely helps it cruise through what is just a hugely crowd-pleasing, really charming, a lot of fun, little sort of rom-com, dark comedy. I love Linklater, and I love that he reminds us every now and then that he's okay just to do a big sort of cheesy, over-the-top, fun film. 3.5 stars for Hitman. It's not going to be the first Hitman film you see on this list, am I right? There's a teaser. Then on the 27th, on the same day, we're into multiple film days here. Yeah, so everyone's chill out a bit. It's gonna get wild. I watched The Beast, which is a new Bertrand Bonello film. There's a lot going on in this film. I'm not entirely sure exactly how to concisely summarize it for you. It's basically a look at two people through various different generations, right? So we see at different periods these people that are meeting and crossing paths in their life. Things get wild. That's all I'm saying. Really liked this one at first, but through the course of the month, I've only liked it more and more as it sits in my brain. Such a sucker for timey-wimey, abstract, provocative filmmaking, and this one comes together in such an interesting way. Yeah, big fan of the way that this thing is just unashamedly provocative. I'm a big fan of films that can do that and still remain engaging without becoming too obnoxious. I have no doubt it's going to land on the obnoxious side for a lot of people that watch it, but I was just, constantly interested in this thing, even if it does take you to places that aren't immediately obvious as to what it's going for. 4 stars for The Beast, as I said, one that only got better in my mind. But I'll tell you what else only got better in my mind, and that is the month of October. Because we saw a lot of films and we're in October now, baby. Kicking things off on the 2nd here with Monster, which is a new Corrida film. Again, a full review is on the channel for that. Link is down there. This is again one I don't want to give too much away on because it unravels in such an interesting way, but it's basically about a boy at school that is having a bit of a difficult time and his mother is trying to step in, work things out with the school, and we sort of watch as this kind of investigation unfolds in the school around what's going on with the boy. Love the way each act here enriches the previous and gradually evolves the story from a seemingly straightforward mystery drama into something much more emotionally resonant and wonderful. Great stuff. 4 stars for Monster. But then on the 3rd of October, I watched Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell, which was one which just sort of crept up on me, and as soon as I heard about it, I knew I had to check it out because it just sounded like 100% my shit. And it ended up being, surprise, surprise, pretty much 100% my shit. It's a really kind of mesmerizing piece of slow cinema. Did feel the markings of other slow cinema greats here and there, but on the whole, Tien An does a remarkable job at creating his own thing. The camera work is absolutely insane as well. Good lord. 4 stars for Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell. Just a thoroughly good time. One I'm very excited to watch again, although, you sort of have to find the time and the frame of mind to get into a juicy piece of slow cinema like this. If you're up for it though, you'll probably enjoy it. Then on the 4th, sat down to watch this year's London Film Festival opening gala film, which was Saltburn, the new one from Emerald Fennell. I wasn't a big fan of her previous one, Promising Young Woman, which is probably going to get some pitchforks up in the air. I was hoping this one would be a better time for me, and I'd click more with her directing, but it still frustrated me in a lot of the same ways. I do think it is a better film than Promising Young Woman, but it grates me a lot more than it satisfies me, annoyingly. Again, full review for this one on the channel, so do make sure to check that out if you want some more in-depth thoughts. Emerald Fennell, 2 for 2 on films that almost completely derail in their final act. Yikes. We'll just leave it at that. We'll leave it at that one for this one. 2.5 stars for Saltburn. Immediately after that, because we're in festival territory, we're watching 3 films a day, and my little mind is screaming if you can hear it. I watched Shortcomings, which is the directorial debut of Randall Park, who I think is a very funny dude. So I was very excited to see what he'd do with a rom-com here, and not good. A truly insufferable rom-com, which essentially gives us a truly terrible fucker to watch be a truly terrible fucker for 90 minutes. There's a very fine line, I think, with films making your lead too unlikable for the film that they're in, if that makes much sense. I am a strong advocate that films can and should have unlikable people as its leads, as long as they're interesting and you're doing something interesting with it, right? This film's central character is the worst person I've seen in a film all year, potentially. And I watched Killers of a Flower Moon. But having that inside the rom-com just, I don't know, it just completely deflates all of the rom-com isms of this film that it's still trying to do. Very insufferable film, wasn't a very big fan of it. 2 stars for Shortcomings. Then we wrap that day off with The Sweet East, which is a directorial debut again. It's a good time of year for watching directorial debuts, I will say. Always a fun part of festival. Again, I don't want to say too much about it. I'm going to say that a lot, but I don't want to give too much away about this film because it's fun to go in as blind as you can. I'll say that it's kind of like an American road trip film, where this girl sort of finds herself hopping between different groups along her journey through the American country. It stars Talia Ryder, who I think is great. I've loved her ever since I saw her in Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. That was the one. Almost forgot it, but I got myself back. Loved the vibe of this thing, rough around the edges and remarkably in tune with its 70s sensibilities. Immediately, it is a film which is clearly dedicated to creating a very old school, shabby vibe to it. And I love that stuff. As a big fan of 70s cinema, I enjoy seeing that kind of rough around the edges, thrown together vibe. It adds a real charm to it, which I think really helps it get along this just crazy sort of roller coaster ride of a film where different characters are gotten thrown into the mix at different points. Also features probably one of my favourite headshots I've seen in a film for a long time, which I appreciate is a borderline psycho thing to say on camera to someone, but it's out there now. 4 stars for The Sweet East. And then we roll on to the sweet next day. It doesn't get better. I watched The Bikeriders on the 5th of October, and again, review for this one on the channel, down there. Enjoyable enough, but honestly becomes apparent very quickly that Nichols just saw some pics of bikers looking vaguely cool and thought it'd be enough to justify a feature. Yeah, this is Jeff Nichols' kind of look at bike riding culture in America, which he made after seeing a photo book of bike riders. And it's one of those films, you get to the credits and you see these images, right? And you're like, yeah, he clearly was just like, they look cool, that'll be enough. Because the film, it's fine overall. I enjoyed it, I had a good enough time with it. But it's not doing a lot outside of the fact that these are bikers that look cool and have fun, cool accents. 3 stars for The Bikeriders. But after The Bikeriders, I watched a new David Fincher film, which is an obviously incredibly exciting thing to happen whenever we get a new Fincher film. It's the second Hitman film we'll be talking about today. I did warn you, and it's very, very good. Full review on the channel, but Fincher continues to be an absolute freak in the opening title sequence sheets, and I'm here for it. I'm a big fan of films that are dedicated and committed to making good opening title sequences. This one it's a very quick one, and it comes very fast and very early on in the film, but it's there, and I just enjoy that it's there. Good, dry sense of humor, which I was kind of surprised by. I don't know, like, I've enjoyed Fincher's sense of humor in all of his films, but it felt a lot more comedic than I expected, which was really, really interesting and surprising. Also, and I cannot stress this enough, Tilda Swinton. 4 stars for The Killer, but I'll tell you what else is killer, and that is the next film we watched. I can't remember what it is, so if I click this button and it's not a killer film, then I've just bloody lied to you. May, December. Okay, yeah, it's killer. I'm not going to say much else here, although I have said much more in my full in-depth review, which you can find. Good God, this is absolutely delicious stuff. Pinpoint precision on the tonal balancing act. Lovely melodrama, but also deeply fucking sad. God, I loved it. I did love this. This really did blow out all the expectations I did already have, which were already quite high for me. Again, good opening title sequence. I'm telling you, they're onto something. 4.5 stars for May, December. Goodness, I can't wait to rewatch this film. But after that, I watched Eileen, a film I actually didn't know anything about this one at all, other than that it had Anne Hathaway in it and Thomasin McKenzie, both actresses I love. I really am not going to say anything about the plot of this one because it is a real, you kind of have to watch it and see how it goes to get it. Really wanted to love what this film ended up doing, and it is the film's most interesting element, but it sort of feels a little too late in the mix and a little too quick to wrap things up as well. I do still admire the fact that it is doing what it is doing, and actually what it ends up becoming is a bit of a saving grace for the film overall, because what it ends up doing at the first half just feels incredibly cliche and by the numbers. But as I said, it's all a little bit too little too late for me in the film. It doesn't quite win me back over as much as I think it needs to and it wants to. 3 stars for Eileen. But then we finish things off there with Hoard, which it's the first one of the festival. There's these films at the festival every year where everyone else in the screening seems to come out and just be sort of talking of films' praises, and I have to quietly just sort of I just didn't like, it wasn't, what did you all watch? Insufferable, obnoxious, and repetitive as its worst, Joseph Quinn seems fun at its best. The performances are good and committed. As I said, the good stuff in there is just like Joseph Quinn just feeling like a lot of fun. Like he was eating things up on screen. But I just think it's a film which feels a little bit too wrapped up and self-involved in its own kind of big boldness. 2 stars for Hoard. But then on the 7th, we watched the big one. It's a new Martin Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon, which is now out, so you probably have seen it at this point. I have got a full review on the channel though. Link down there for my in-depth thoughts on this one. But yeah, I mean, were we ever doubting Scorsese at this point? Obviously an absolute huge film, but also filled with some surprising touches that I love. Really remarkable in the way that I think it keeps its perspective on the right side of things and isn't afraid to, as we've seen from all of Scorsese's films, interrogate, you know, the subject matter and the audience that it knows are watching this thing. Just deeply fucked up and sad though at the end of the day. A long, heavy watch that I haven't rewatched yet, but I'm still desperate to rewatch. 4.5 stars for Martin Scorsese's The Killers of the Flower Moon. Just so good. And then on the 7th, I watched a new Wim Wenders, which was, again, this is the thing. This year's London Film Festival, this year's sort of festival run for cinema in general, is just filled with absolute masters delivering new works. There's a new Wim Wenders out. Love the guy. He's a great director. I was very excited to see what he'd do with Perfect Days, which is a story of a Tokyo toilet cleaner. We basically watch his day-to-day life as he goes about doing that, and we see the people in his life. Again, full reviews down there for that if you want to see more in-depth thoughts. But for now, just absolutely wonderful. What the hell else would you expect from Vim? Yeah, just an absolutely effortless, heartwarming and charming, but also moving, funny look at day-to-day life, you know? Daily life films can sometimes be a little bit frustrating or tired or cliche, but this is one that just feels full of like genuine, authentic life, which sounds cheesy, but I'm saying it anyway. 4 stars for Perfect Days. A very high 4 stars, I should add. But then on the next day, on the 8th of October, I watched All of Us Strangers, which is one you've probably been hearing about. A big weepy, a big cry film. It absolutely is that. It completely emotionally destroyed me, and I was weeping like a baby at the end of this film, come the credits. Yeah, man, this thing absolutely ruined me. Huge, oh yeah, I forgot I could cry like that vibes as I sat through the credits. Truly just didn't want to get up and talk to my pals around me because I just thought I'd probably just ugly cry at them. You can find my full review for more in-depth thoughts down there in the description. But for now, 4 stars for All of Us Strangers. More like All of Us bloody cry holes in the audience, because we'll move on. The Boy and the Heron was next on the 8th. This is a new Studio Ghibli film, and also a new Miyazaki film. After having said that he wasn't doing anymore, he was like, hey, yeah, no, psych. Has all the ingenious creative flourishes you'd expect from a Miyazaki, and some typically absolutely stunning animation, but it comes together in a way which feels just a little bit lacking, especially compared to other Ghibli bangers. Yeah, I don't know, usually with these films, they are filled with so much kind of heightened, creative, absurd character stuff going on, but it will all kind of pull together into a really satisfying emotional whole. This one does pull together into a whole, but it just doesn't feel quite as satisfying as I wanted it to, given how great it was all being set up. 3.5 stars for The Boy and the Heron. Then on the 8th, I watched Fingernails, which is a dystopian sci-fi romantic drama starring Riz Ahmed and Jessie Buckley. All of that on paper, I'm thinking, sign me the fuck up. But it fell flat in quite a lot of regards for me, annoyingly. Looks really great, performed well enough, but just one of those vaguely intriguing concepts that doesn't really get anywhere near the parts of it that are actually interesting. Again, it's one of those films which I kind of admire what it was trying to say with things, more than I enjoyed the actual execution of how it was saying those things. 2 stars for Fingernails. If you're not a fan of people's fingernails being pulled off, maybe give this one a skip. I say that as if there's anyone's like, yeah, no, I am actually a fan of that. Sign me the fuck up. Then on the 8th, again, to finish off a 4-film day here. Whoa, that's, I don't even know I had it in me to watch that many films in one day. I watched the surprise film at the London Film Festival, which is, as it sounds, they show a film, you don't know what it's going to be until it literally starts playing. This year's was Ferrari, the new Michael Mann film. I'll tell you straight up, guys, I had zero interest in Ferrari. Really, truly, I'm not a car guy. I don't really care about Ferrari as a business, as a person, as any of it's not a film for me. It's just not a film for me. And this thing finished, and the general consensus from everyone was that it wasn't a very good time and it was a bit of a waste of a surprise film ticket. I'm gonna say I liked it. What on earth? There's a point, maybe like 45 minutes or an hour into this film, where I found myself thinking to myself, I think I'm enjoying this film. People will say Adam Driver should stop playing Italians, but I would counter that with, are you mad? If you're not enjoying Adam Driver's run of playing Italians on screen, I can't help you, dude. Like, we're just not on the same page. 3 stars for Ferrari. That's gonna surprise some people, I believe. Fuck it. Then on the 9th, I watched one of the films I've been very excited to check out at the festival because it had been getting a lot of buzz everywhere it had been showing, and I was just waiting to finally watch it. That one was How to Have Sex, the directing debut from Molly Manning Walker. Again, I've got a full review for it on the channel. You can find out my more in-depth thoughts. Much more worthwhile watching those because it's a film which I think deserves to be spoken about a little bit more in depth. Really, really remarkable as a debut. It's very, very good, very authentic in a kind of at first charming and then wholly unsettling way. A lot of horrible illuminations of rape culture anchored by a performance from McKenna Bruce that is so lived in and well realised. It has been a great year for performances, as it always is when there are many films in a year. But Mia McKenna Bruce here is so good and gives one of my favourite acting decisions I've seen all year. And how's this for a hook and teaser? I'm not going to tell you what that is, but I do mention it in my review, so go give that a watch down there. 4 stars for How to Have Sex. I followed that one up on the 9th with Maestro, which is a new one from Bradley Cooper. You will remember he did A Star Is Born. Very, very good film. When it was announced he was doing a biopic of Leonard Bernstein, I wasn't hugely excited by the whole thing. I don't know what it is exactly. I think I tend to have that vibe when it comes to biopics. I'm just not here for boring by-the-number biopics. But my God, this thing won me over big time by the end. I had a thoroughly great time with Maestro. Beautiful 35mm photography, obviously nuts good score, really gorgeous. Yet remarkable how quickly this film got me from not being hugely interested and invested in a biopic to crying at it. I've got a full review for more thoughts down there, but for now, 4 stars for Maestro. Then we finish that day off the 9th of October with Evil Does Not Exist, which is the new one from Raisuke Hamaguchi. It's basically about a kind of rural community that is approached by a corporation that wants to build a glamping experience there. So it's kind of look at eco-anxieties and the drama of the clashes between that side of things. Love the refusal to explain any more than it needs to, which does lead to a little more meandering than usual here, but keeps things intriguing. It doesn't come together quite as effectively as I wanted it to, and I do think it's one of those films that, although it leaves a lot of questions open to discussion, which I like films that can garner discussion after you've seen it, I do feel like I would have liked a little bit more meat to it in the actual runtime. 3.5 stars for Evil Does Not Exist, one which I'm actually quite excited to watch again and go back to. Then on the 10th, we watched another new Paul Mescal film from the festival. This one, he's alongside Saoirse Ronan. It is Foe, which is out, so you may or may not have seen it. Again, I've got a full review down there. I'll keep things short on this one. Not a good film. Really not very good. The film deserves to be sent the fuck up to space for committing the mortal sin of making me bored by a Paul Mescal and Saoirse Ronan romance. How do you fuck that up? Probably the worst film at the festival I saw. 1.5 star for Foe. But how's this for cinematic whiplash? I went from watching probably the worst film of the festival to probably the best film of the festival in The Zone of Interest, which is a new one from Jonathan Glazer. It is an incredible film, is what it is. I've got a full review for it in the description down below, so definitely going to check my full thoughts out on that. I've kept things very brief on my Letterboxd review. Jesus Christ, Jonathan, a good 3-word review. This film was remarkable in its starkness and just how horrible it was and how just mundane the evil in this film is and how it presents that mundanity, that evil that was happening at this time period. Horrible, horrible film, but easily the best film I think I've seen this year. And the first immediate 5-star banger we had at the festival, so let's have a little round of applause for Jonathan Glazer. But then on the 11th of October, the next day, I watched the second film from director James Samuel, The Book of Clarence. He previously did that Netflix one whose name I can't remember. The Harder They Fall. There we go. Didn't even need to look that one up. This one is another instance of him taking a genre, a story, and just infusing it with a very stylistic black approach to things, which I think should have amounted to a better time. Sadly though, found just as much frustration as I did satisfaction in the jumbled mess of ideas and jokes. About an hour in, you've pretty much seen all this film has to offer. And the climax of the film really just ended up losing me a little bit. I didn't find myself as engaged in that side of things. 2.5 stars for The Book of Clarence. Then on the 13th, I watched The End We Start From, which is another dystopian sci-fi film, this time starring Jodie Comer, who I just previously watched in the Bikeriders. It's kind of fun of festival season, is seeing the same person pop up in multiple different films. This one is set in a future where weather and big floods pushes people out of the city, and that leads to desperation. This woman has a baby, and she's basically trying to survive this new world that we find ourselves in. I know it's easy to compare a lot of dystopian future concepts to classics, but truly just felt so derivative of Children of Men for way too much of its runtime. I could not shake the entire feeling of having seen this all done better before. Children of Men is the obvious and very clear one, but there are many different cliches that we've seen in dystopian films before being done here. I do think there is enough in there to keep me interested and engaged at the minimal level, and everyone's very good in it. Jodie Comer is great in the central performance here. But yeah, I really would have loved to have seen it do a little bit more with its concept and with its vibe and idea. 3 stars for The End We Start From. Yeah, it just kind of made me want to go watch Children of Men again. Then I took a break from the London Film Festival to go and watch something very, very late compared to everyone else that saw it when it actually came out in cinemas. That one was The Creator. A very annoying watch in many ways. One of those, I wish this came together better than it did because your film looks lovely kind of vibes. Production side, practical side of things, this film is firing on all cylinders. The other side of things is where it falls flat, I think. The kind of meat of this thing, the concepts and what it's trying to say and its messaging and its story, but it just gets stuck behind too many obstacles along its way, which I just think it should have known better than. 3 stars for The Creator. But now that disappointing cinema pit stop is out the way. We're back at the London Film Festival to wrap things up as we come to the home stretch of things. We kept some good things to last in the form of Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things on the 14th of October. It's all lining up for this to go very well, and surprise, surprise, had an absolute hoot for this one. Wide-angle lenses are my Achilles heel, so like, yeah, this was basically lens porn for me. The cinematography of this one, the photography of its scenes and its environments, and the way that characters move through its environments, oh my God. It looks so good. I could have watched hours of this thing. I do think it does feel like Lanthimos' most accessible film, which I don't necessarily mean to be as big a negative as that sounds. It is a film which is much more interested in creating a really fun, wild, over-the-top and absurd vibe, more so than it is creating a disturbing vibe, as we've seen from some of his previous films. 4 stars for Poor Things. And then we get to the actual last film of the London Film Festival. God, that was a lot to get through. But we finish things off with Daniel Kaluuya's directing debut, The Kitchen. He is co-directing, I should say, alongside Kiboy Tavares, but it's Kaluuya. I love Kaluuya as an actor. I was very excited to see what he'd do behind the camera. A risky swing to put this as the closing film of the festival, but it makes a lot of sense having watched it, because this is a very British, London to be specific, dystopian sci-fi film that I thought was really fantastic. Such a good central duo that absolutely lets Kaluuya and Tavares get away with a bit more than they might have otherwise have. But honestly, just found this a real joy to watch. Really did deliver a lot of the stuff that I'd like to get from a British London set sci-fi film. I've got a full review for this one on the channel. 4 stars for The Kitchen. And now that we're out of the London Film Festival side of things, we can start getting back to other stuff that's been coming out. And the first thing I wanted to do apparently was sit down with a new slasher film. I sat and watched Totally Killer, which I'd heard some very good things about. And I'm here to say, was not very good at all. I kept it short on my Letterboxd. Honestly, just shit and not very fun. I don't think it needs me to say much more. I'm a bit annoyed, or at least growing tired of the fact that modern slasher films feel like they need to just be so winky, look how silly this all is. I'd like to see a film that is just a through and through slasher and unafraid of that side of things. This kind of felt like it should have worked, but I don't know, just nothing really came together as much as I wanted it to. So it just feels like shit happening and then ending, and it just wasn't particularly fun. 2 stars for Totally Killer. More like, this is a totally filler. Am I right or am I right? Then I watched Saw, the first one, on a rewatch, because obviously the new one came out and I figured, hey, we'll at least watch the first 2. And you know what? The first Saw, it still rips, man. It's still a great time. Always surprised at how well this one holds up and still slaps. Absolutely thanks to one's energetic and hugely satisfying direction. You know, I'll never forget watching this for the first time as a kid and just being like, what? That's the craziest twist I've ever seen. It isn't really the craziest twist ever when you watch it now. On rewatch, it does lose a little bit in that sense. But one's direction, man, especially from his earlier films, that kind of rough around the edges but still very energetic and accomplished direction. I love it, man. It's so much fun to watch. Definitely, it's obviously still the best Saw. 4 stars for it, in fact. Then I rewatched the second Saw film, Saw 2. Who'd have thunk? This one I remember being better than it actually is. It is definitely a notable step down from the first one. It doesn't quite have the same actual energy as one's direction in the first one has. I know you shouldn't really think too deep on motivations in these, but it's never not hilarious that this one is essentially just, hey, you're not a good dad, so I'm going to kidnap your son and torture the shit out of some folks while I'm at it. It is very funny. 3 stars for Saw 2. So that was me prepped as much as I think I needed to prep for Saw X or Saw 10. It is Saw 10, right? The new one, obviously, in the Saw franchise. I'd heard a lot of people say that this was actually surprisingly very good. Some people have claimed it's the best one in a franchise. Those people are wrong. It's not a very good film, this. Unbelievably stupid, which I know isn't much of a surprise at this stage in a franchise, but it absolutely thinks it is smarter than that. I wanted to keep this brief, but we've got to touch on this. It is annoying how much the franchise is now leaning into John Kramer being sympathetic, and this one is fully amping into that side of things, because it's never actually true that these people deserve to be tortured and killed, or that he is somehow less of a monster doing that because, I don't know, the dentist ruined his teeth once. Because it's silly, but it works enough as a motivation for a horror killer. It doesn't work when you really truly lean into it as the entire premise of your film. It just doesn't. Especially because, yeah, this is set between the first and second film. 2 films where we are watching a serial killer be an absolute monster. And then this film slots itself in the middle and is like, hey, but he did get fucked over, didn't he? It is the exact sort of film that worked as a throwaway line for his backstory. But when you see it actually being fleshed out and investigated in a full narrative, it just falls apart. It is stupid. It's silly. I don't care about him in that sense. Some seriously hilarious level of trying to make us sympathise with John Kramer here, like high-fiving kids after fixing their bike. It is the funniest opening half hour of a Saw film we've had yet, so it at least has that going for it. I guess that's the last time I trust the internet, huh? 2 stars for Saw X, Saw 10, whatever you want to call it. Not a great watch. Luckily though, the next film I watched on the 25th was Anatomy of a Fall, which was a great watch. I have again got a full review for this on the channel. Sandra Hüller, you absolute machine. What a performance, what a film. Remarkably interesting, absorbing, and fascinating little French courtroom drama. I'm not going to say too much about it. Again, it's a film which is much better experience knowing as little as you can going in, but it is just such a knockout performance from Hüller here. 4.5 stars for Anatomy of a Fall. Then on the 29th, we're getting into Halloween territory. You know, a lot of people will say October is entirely for Halloween. It is, but I was very busy, so I only finally got around to watching some actual horror films. The Saw films are horror films, what I'm on about, but you know, there's just a certain horror vibe you want to get into. I watched When Evil Lurks, another film which I had no idea about, but then everyone was like, hey, this is actually very, very good. Why did it wasn't good. Essentially just scene hopping, let's see how brutal we can go shocks, stitched together by a story that feels like it was being written on the go. It reminded me a little bit, it's entirely different films, but of The Sadness, that zombie horror film that came out in the lockdown. But that film was very shocking in its kind of gore and its kills, and it quickly became apparent that it didn't have much else going for it other than just being shocking. And after about 2 or 3 kills, you just wear a bit tired of it, and you just, I need a bit more than just shock. This film was absolutely that for this year. I just got very bored of it within about half an hour. It's kind of crazy watching characters do this shit, yeah, for sure. But then after 3 times of watching people eat heads out of babies or whatever, you just kind of go, cool, what else have you got? And the answer is not a lot. 2 stars for When Evil Lurks. Then I watched on the 30th, the last London Film Festival watch. The film festival was over, but there are still some films that are available to watch for press for a little while afterwards. This was the last one I managed to get watched, called Paradise is Burning. I'm going to do a full review on the channel, so we'll keep things brief here, but it's a directorial debut from Mika Gustafsson, and it is a fantastic fucking film. I thoroughly loved it. Filled this year's coming of age hole, wasn't sure if the chaotic editing style would get in the way of it at first, but it worked so well, and I just fucking loved it all. I love filmmakers that can come along and, on their debut fucking film no less, just assert themselves as a really clear, exciting voice in film, and I really do think Gustafsson is that here. I just loved it. It was so good. It hit all of the beats I needed it to hit. 4.5 stars for Paradise is Burning. Then we finished the month off on the 31st of October with the Halloween watch this year, and we decided to go for It Follows. Haven't seen this one in a while, and obviously they just announced the second one, which is, I'm not 100% sure how I feel on a sequel to It Follows, but it obviously made me want to just watch this one again. Do you still find it funny that one demon guy is just naked for some reason? Let it all out, my guy. Love that for you. There's not a huge amount to add to the It Follows hype that hasn't already been said. It's a very strong film, but I need to reiterate, there's just a naked dude on the roof at one point in the film. It's not an actual problem in the film. It's just funny to me. He's just there with his willy out. Maika Monroe, so good, man. I love her. Every time I watch her, she's just so great. And I love her in this film. It's a fantastic banger. 4 stars for It Follows. And with that, I need to take a deep breath. I can feel my mouth getting drier than anything that's ever been dry in the world before. But we've just finished rounding up October and September. That was mammoth. I can't remember when I wasn't doing this video. If you saw any of the films that I watched these past 2 months and you want to say something about them, you want to disagree with me or agree with me, let me know what you thought of them in the comments down below. Obviously, go and check out the full reviews for the films I've got full reviews for. More importantly though, if you have got anything you want me to be watching and you want to see, I don't know, potentially mentioned in a future last month on Letterboxd, let me know in the comments down below. Any suggestions for films you think I should check out that you think I might vibe with, or that you think I'm not going to vibe with. That could be fun as well. If you enjoyed this video and you do want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. We do monthly updates most of the time on what I've been watching, but there's a load more reviews to come for the end of the year from the film festival and elsewhere in cinema in the year. Make sure you click the button down there to subscribe so you're not missing any of those reviews when they do drop. With that, we are done here. I will see you guys very soon for some more thoughts on more films. But until next time, I need water more than anyone's ever needed water before. It's an empty cup. Why did I put an empty cup in front of me for the end of the video, Stu? Why did you do this?